So Wallsocket is pretty great. Hey guys, it's Mel. We are back with the latest and greatest in music and music information and news, and with reporting out there faster than TMZ. Okay, maybe it's been a minute since Wallsocket has actually released, but I'm gonna be honest with you, full transparency with my viewer base. You know, you guys watch me, you are loyal to my channel, you like and subscribe. So I'll be honest with you, I got lazy, I got tired, I didn't want to do it. I wrote half of it the first week it came out and then finished it yesterday. Anyways, this is probably the last review that I will do in this format just for the sake of brevity, but what better album to end the long format style on than Wallsocket. Underscores is an artist that, you know, for me at least, was always somewhat adjacent to the music that I listened to. I became familiar with her work a few years back with the release of her debut studio album Fishmonger, but my attention dedicated to it was intermittent and non-committal, so to say I was an Underscores fan beyond about half a year ago would probably be a little dishonest. But I'm happy that with the release of her second studio album, I was able to be present and attentive for the singles and promotion surrounding the rollout, which in and of itself has been incredibly interesting and entertaining. Because like everything else on Wallsocket, it was done with a commendable level of meticulous intent. Every piece of promotion that gave peeks into the intricacies of the project was done in such a way that one would hope an album rollout would be done. It was captivating and it was attention grabbing. The music videos, the Wallsocket Michigan government website, the general lore surrounding everything, it's all been a very well done sort of ARG to help build context and environment for the album. And I don't know if you know this about me, but I love concept albums. If well done, I'm almost guaranteed to like an album more if it has an intriguing and well-made narrative specific to the project. And on Wallsocket, Underscores manages to balance the different angles that this album has and pretty much commit to them all from a musical side of things and from a conceptual side as well. And I know that some of you will be disappointed to hear this, but this review will primarily be focusing on the musical side of things, as well as how the themes of the album are presented. The narrative is the vessel in which the themes are translated, but I will be focused on how the messages break through. I won't be telling you what I think the actual direct narrative of the story is, and trying to sort of piece it together and fill in the blanks between the provided contexts for each track. I'm sure there are people out there that could do a much better job at that than I could, and that alone would probably make for quite a long video. Underscores. Wallsocket, 12 tracks, 55 minutes. Let's get into it. The album starts with Cops and Robbers, which was also the lead single for the project, releasing May 3rd of this year. The song is about one Joshua Domingo, a fictional resident of the fictional town of Wallsocket, Michigan, being caught for embezzling money from the bank he worked at. Right away, the song kicks into gear with the super saturated guitars and crushed percussion. It's a pretty quick example of what makes the production on this album a lot of fun, because underneath the thrashy hyperpunk instrumentation and the overtly glossy mix, there's a lot of really cool details in how the instrumentals on this album are done. The crashing percussion is loose and organic, and the guitar fills up pretty much all of the space that it can, but later in the track there are these additional melodies added in the form of buzzing synths, airy key melodies, and these elements add so much more texture to the track and make it so very dynamic. And Underscores has a pretty killer vocal performance on the track too. I think that when approaching this type of writing and this sort of narrative, you really do have to commit to it, especially for a full-length project. And I think that the dedication to portraying this character is really what sells the song, and honestly the entire album for me. The confident and matter-of-fact delivery paired with the comically straightforward process of the embezzlement being explained to the listener is so genuinely entertaining. It's an amazing opener because even if the narrative of the project starts in like the middle of things happening, and in this case a bank robbery happening in the town that we have little context for, it's an immediate attention grabber and it hooks the listener into being interested of this narrative with a little bit of a comical starting pistol. It also doesn't hurt that this song has one of the catchiest and most infectiously hooks of the entire year. And then moving on from the explosive energy of the bank robbery, Locals is song 2 on the track list, and it very might well be the most entertaining song of the whole damn year. Underscores use of these repeated sort of droning phrases in the beginning that morph into what almost could be considered as the driving melody for the first section of the track creates a very hypnotic and well-coordinated intro that is pretty much pure ear candy. The song is deeply eclectic in its influence, and I think that the electrifying prog pop and dance punk sound on this song pulls from the most egregious examples of the peak of 2000s era of American pop music and cultivates it into a sound that Underscores can safely call her own. The insistently brazen and over-the-top delivery of these characters' perceptions of each other are not only borderline annoyingly fun, but are so fucking Kesha that it is insane. The crushed claps and the deep kicks holding together a rattling swelling synth bass line, and shouted crowd vocal sounds massive and has this wonderfully harsh sheen over it that gives it a bit of edge over maybe the glossier songs that share this sound. And then the brash, anthemic chorus wraps the themes and the messages of the track really, really well. I don't know how Underscores does it, but every single chorus on this album has immediate staying power. I will never get them out of my head. And although Locals creates an energy that would be difficult for any of Underscore's contemporaries to match, Gabby Start matches it pretty seamlessly with an equally sassy and entitled delivery. The repeated "I started laughing at the Locals" line is theatrically fun. And the outro section, especially in the "Impractical is Crucial" line, feels almost like Jack Stauber inspired with how Underscore sews together these different characterized deliveries. In terms of the narrative and the connected themes of the album, I think that this is where you're given information. Cops and Robbers is kind of the bait to pull you in, and Locals in a very fun way expands the world, it introduces characters, and it dives into the predominant themes. I know that Horseshoe Theory is a huge thing on this, and Underscores very much wants you to recognize it. And then we have Duh, which is a song about one of the characters of the narrative getting diagnosed with a rare disease and then interpreting it as a warning from God. It is the first track on the project where Underscore sort of pulls back the energy a little bit for a more reserved approach, expanding upon the dynamics and the emotions of the album in a more subtle way. And of course, if you go by singles, then this very much is not the first song with a more reserved energy, but whatever, we're going by the track list. And Duh has a much more harrowing energy to it than the previous tracks, as these distant does pan out in the background. Underscores gives a weary and somewhat upfront depiction of this disease. And what this song kind of does is show a different side of the same coin of Underscore's creative philosophy and mission statement here. Because although this song presents an entirely flipped approach to the narrative that the album has presented so far, the main driving force on a sonic and technical level is very much still the same. The use of the vocal clips in the background, the overly crushed percussion that feels frantic and staticky, the melodramatic ambience, and the very direct songwriting approach holds the same creative ethos as the more energetic tracks on this album, showing that Underscores is committed to this uncompromising and maximalist approach to her songs, whether it be in brash prog pop, haunting lo-fi, or bouncing rockabilly. Duh is just that in a bit more of a subtle way. And that won't be for everybody, but while listening to this eerie ballad of illness and vindictive anger culminating into oppressive, energetic peaks, I understood that it was definitely for me. And then You Don't Even Know Who I Am continues to pursue this more delicate approach to the narrative with an absolutely haunting track about romanticizing hardship and falling into the trap of parasocial relationships. The vocal clips in the beginning once again almost act as the melody for the song under a moody and somewhat muddy guitar progression. It's a really cool sound that I was initially curious about whether or not it would overstay its welcome, but after listening to this song a pretty good number of times, I enjoy its inclusion a lot. And the haunting nature of this song and its implications and the greater narrative are translated really well, and it acts as a pretty large expository section for the album and for this character, showing the toxicity and the mentality of Mara. I Think I'm in Love with the Cards You Were Dealt, How It Felt, is the big initial indicator that this character is romanticizing someone's unfortunate upbringing, and although it acts as a turning point for the characters and the narrative, I do think that in a very descriptive and personal way reflects very real dynamics and behavior that people exhibit, whether it be with celebrities, romantic interests, or even just friends. And this expands upon such a level of infatuation that they have broken into somebody's house to wear their clothes and take their medication, completely crossing boundaries for the sake of getting a taste of a lifestyle that they are greatly abstracting. It is an eerie and uncomfortable song, and unlike Duh, it slowly fades into the distance after a short burst of energy. The song is arguably my least favorite on the album, but even if it remains at the bottom of my ranking for this setlist, I appreciate it more with each listen. I think it's a jarringly pretty track, and something being the least favorite track on Wallsocket, it's still pretty good. It's still a pretty great track. Up next is Johnny Johnny Johnny, and in the SoundCloud description of this track it has a content warning for victims of grooming, and so I will also be adding one as well. I won't be going too far into detail, but skip to this part in the video if you would like to avoid discussion on this topic and on this song. Johnny 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 has one of the most sickeningly sweet instrumentals on this entire album. This smooth, groovy bass, this bit crush percussion, the bouncy guitar hits, it is slick, and it is definitely one of my favorite instrumentals on this entire project. The use of the children's game known as Johnny Whoop, or just Johnny Johnny, as the intro and as the later part of the chorus kind of works in two ways. One being that its repetitious nature makes for a memorable part of the song, something that is catchy, but also that it directly plays into the themes and the narrative of the track with it being a children's game. Musically, this song rocks. It's glistening and it's polished in its instrumentation, and vocally it has some of Underscore's best melodies on the entire project, especially in the chorus. And this sort of transitionary section with the "Oh Johnny, I Think I Love You" sounds really, really cool, sort of along with these twangy guitar chords spread intermittently throughout the track. Like I said, it's slick and it is well produced, having this sort of looming elegance to it. And then we get into the subject matter of the track, which I've noticed has not surprisingly sparked a more frenzied discussion online than the other songs. But personally, I think that the subject matter and themes are handled pretty well, and in a manner much more delicate than what maybe seem on the surface. And in Johnny Johnny Johnny, Underscores kind of gives a bit of a cautionary tale of grooming, abuse, and power dynamics wrapped into the vessel of catchy electronic pop rock, and I appreciate how it is presented. I think that it depicts very real and urgent problems in internet spaces, especially ones that can be reflected upon actual geographic locations like the town the story takes place in. The lines, "cause Johnny's gonna be the one that finally makes me real," and the sort of reveal at the end, "when Johnny was 11, I hadn't even been born," stand out the most to me because they are the lines that help reinforce not only how dangerous and traumatic these situations can be, but also how people are coerced into being in them in the first place. It is a song that covers a lot of ground. It's really, really well made. I love it. Then we have Shoot to Kill, Kill Your Darlings, which has some of Underscore's best writing not only on this project, but in her entire discography as well. The song is about one of the character's close friends potentially leaving the town to join the military, and I cite this as one of her best written songs because it shows how painfully accurate it depicts growing up in the fraught landscape of rural America. It slowly builds up the scenario, at first acknowledging the appeal of shooting guns at the gun range, but then saying that that form of enjoyment is not the same as maybe being an ROTC and using that as a transition into the military, where the threat of death is very real and where recruiters have predatory recruitment tactics roping children into wars. The second verse paints a great dichotomy between a kid in the ROTC and his girlfriend who is a cheerleading captain, where he thinks her behavior is a little too promiscuous, but the irony is lost on him that he has willingly handed over his body to the military, so in reality he should understand that the choices made about her body are hers to make. And then furthering this aversion to this decision by describing a potential future where her friend never joins the military and is, living a boring but safe life. Like I said, one of Underscore's best written songs, and it does a great job of not only furthering the narrative of the album, but has a great translation of his messages and themes. Instrumentally, the song has a great bounce to it, with some bit crush percussion holding together some erratic beeps and sliding synths. It's a pretty consistent mid-tempo beat. That's a great environment for Underscore's vocals. I love these spacey transitions and the punchy guitars in the instrumental bridges as well, and the distorted vocals at the end repeating over this muddy guitar ends the track with a bit of a thematic gut punch. I love it. And speaking of gut punches, horror movie soundtrack delivers a pretty massive one. The song is a depiction of apathy, succumbing to the ills of life and society and giving up on things, but also a reflected sense of misanthropy, which is highlighted in the heavily repeated "you won't get away with this" line. The song is powered by these eerie, low-toned notes that haunt the background of the track, and a single and similarly eerie plucked guitar melody working parallel to the vocals. Underscores in her vocals does a great job of balancing sadness and destitution, but also anger on this track, despite the song being sonically reserved and fairly minimal. It's one of the more nuanced performances on this album. It's a harrowing track depicting the final defiance of somebody who has given up on life, and although I don't have too much to say about it other than sonically I think it's compelling, and lyrically it's vindictive, angry, and sad in its acceptance, it's an incredibly important track for this project, and I think that it acts as an effective middle point for the album. The piano at the end is quite lovely as well. Old Money Bitch is another great example of how Underscore's commitment to this fusion of prog-pop, alternative rock, and even some more twangy influences paired with this infectiously overblown sense of style and personality reflects in some of the most interesting music that you can probably listen to right now. The song expands further not only upon this apathetic but advantageously wealthy person, but also the characters that observe her. This is somebody that greatly benefits from generational wealth, acting inverse to the expectations set for her by society, at times almost acting erratically detached from her upbringing. On the surface, it feels like a mid-2000s party hit, with the soft vocalizations leading into an explosive hook with these sparkly keys, saturated chords, and even some record scratches, but diving further into it reveals a song jam-packed with exposition, world building, and some pretty great portraits of the characters that Underscores has created for this album. The characterized snarky delivery of the vocals, the tongue-in-cheek dialogue, is all so well delivered, and instrumentally it is a huge highlight on this album, and similar to Shoot to Kill, Kill Your Darlings, it's some of Underscore's best writing. It's incredibly descriptive, and apart from the narrative of the album, doubles as a fantastic satirization of a very specific type of person. And then there's Jeez Louise, which is probably my favorite song on this entire album. Right off the bat, Underscore flexes some really intense and thrashy instrumentation, the frantic snares, industrial kicks, and jagged guitar melodies are all an absolute thrill. A roller coaster is packed into the walls of this track. I love the sort of whirring guitar tone in between verses. It reminds me a lot of nu metal from the 2000s. This song instrumentally is amazing. And then the hook on this song is explosive and has such a strong sense of style. Both Underscores and Henhouse give like career-defining performances on this song. It's got an amazing sense of personality and energy backing them. And then after this crushed, thrashy, and shouted first minute and a half, it shifts into a bit more of an acoustic rockabilly section, and the transition from the uncompromisingly brash rock section to more country influence is one of the single best moments on this entire album. Despite having such a stark contrast to the beginning of the song, it is done in a way that completely makes sense. The more relaxed flow from Underscores works really great with this sort of bouncing and sliding guitar. She absolutely kills this. And the rest of the song boasts a super ethereal and ambient section with Henhouse singing some really gentle vocals that move into a very wide instrumental mix. It is very hypnotizing. I love the sound of it. And then finishing off with the explosive energy of the beginning, recontextualized in a whole new way. It's very energetic and intense, but in a different way that I think plays really well and parallels the beginning of the track nicely. This song has some of the best instrumentation, performances, and of course writing as well. Because this song covers a lot of ground, diving into the perversion of religion and its dark roots in colonization, struggles with identity and what it means to be your own person, and then separation from a crowd that will never accept you for who you are. It is one of my favorite songs on this album. It is one of my favorite songs of the entire year. This song is stunning. This is I can't even like, it's hard to find the words to explain how much I absolutely love this track. And then 77 Dog Years is a slick alternative track that does further expansion upon the main characters of the Wallsocket narrative, particularly on the previously described parasocial relationship and earlier events of the narrative. I think this track has a really great balance of the different sides of the spectrum of Underscore's approach to these songs on Wallsocket. Instrumentally, it is polished and clean in the guitar, but maintains the recurring crushed percussion whose harsher tones contrast well with the smooth guitar melodies. The song has a really great bounce to it and a deceptive performance from Underscores. It's a little more low-key than the other songs, but the conversational tone is a great choice that gives the song a lot of personality and a lot of Underscores' personal flair to things. It is just yet another example of the amount of control over the musical environments Underscores has. Everything is so intentional and meticulously crafted. And then we have Uncanny Long Arms featuring Jane Remover. This song is a lot. Thematically and instrumentally, it is a very overwhelming track, with Underscores and Jane both having such ghostly presences on the track, crying out on every single verse in different ways. You know, it's genuinely really haunting, and even when it explodes with energy, with the intensity of the instrumentation and the intensity of the vocals, the undertones are still very destitute and painful. I love how diverse the sound on this track is while maintaining its cohesion. These super brash, almost white noised chords that have this sort of drone over roomy percussion and sharp tones are essentially maximalist ambience, and the vocal mixes on both Underscores and Jane's verses play beautifully into what the instrumental calls for and demands, whether it be wet and pulsing delay or distorted and borderline incomprehensible saturation. No matter what the song calls for, it is accomplished with a very heavy and poignant way. Dealing with identity, relationships, and death, this song is a very poignant burst of emotion that I think will be hard to match for quite a while. And then we're at the end with Good Luck Final Girl, which is a heart-wrenching folk track, and I think that it's probably one of the most melancholic and bittersweet songs that I've heard in a while. The approach to the structure of the song is pretty much exactly what it needs to be, with a consistent acoustic guitar progression, these sort of whining strings, and a pretty conversational tone and delivery once again. I love the writing on this, lots of great uses of imagery and tie-ins to the entire narrative of this album. And man, this foggy, intimate ending to the song sort of takes your breath away. It's chill-inducing. I get chills listening to it. It's a reserved and upfront way to end the project, and as it fades out, you're essentially watching, hearing, maybe perhaps, the end of a story that will continue behind the scenes unbeknownst to anybody else. It is heavy, and it sticks with you. It's an amazing ending to the project. And that's it. That's my thoughts on Underscore's Wallsocket. This is definitely one of my favorite albums to come out this year, and I think that it really just accomplishes so many things and covers a lot of ground, not only in the narrative and the writing of the project building up this concept album, but also instrumentally. It really does a lot of cool things, and it blends a lot of very eclectic styles into something that Underscores can pretty safely call her own, something that she has reached to a point where I can't really say anybody else is doing it. Will it be for everybody? Probably not. I mean, I would say most things aren't for everybody, but I do think that the sound that Underscores has kind of cornered and marketed here is one that is incredibly special and unique and will be appreciated for quite a long time. And with that, we end the review. Thanks so much for watching. This took a while to get out, but it also took a while to write, so can you blame me? It was hard. I had to talk about an album that I liked, and that's harder than talking about things I don't like. I don't know. Bye.